Alright, what's going on, guys? We are back with another video. Big leg day today, which I actually just finished. I waited till the session was done today to do this intro. Reason for that, right now, kind of a little update for where I am. At the moment, I'm in my peak off-season, so we're currently in a holding phase, which means food is at an all-time high, PEDs is at an all-time high, and with that, body weight's at an all-time high, and with that, output is at an all-time high, which means I'm coming into most of my sessions right now with a bit of performance anxiety because I know that it is going to be hell to beat the logbook from the week prior. So it is extremely important for me right now to come into my sessions with the right mindset. And I knew if I were to sit down and do an intro before I started, I was just going to be preoccupied with what I had to do during the session. So instead, I came in, focused on what I needed to do, and it paid off today. I got PRs pretty much across the board. So in terms of the session, we started with hanging leg raises. From there, moved into a straight leg calf raise. Crazy skipping in the background. Adductors. From there, we went into the big movement of the session, which was stiff leg deadlifts. Followed that up with prone hamstring curls. Then moved into a banded leg press. Followed by dumbbell walking lunges, or I actually bodyweight walking lunges today. Then rounded out the session with seated hamstring curls and seated calf raises as well. Yeah, check it out. Don't forget to drop any questions below. If you have any, I'll be happy to answer. Don't forget to like the video, share it with someone if you think they might enjoy it, and otherwise check it out and enjoy. Okay, so starting the session today with hanging leg raises first. What this is doing, over and above stretching my lats, bringing my hip flexors and my abs into play, and really kind of waking up everything involved in bracing. What it's doing essentially is allowing me to get in a position where my rib cage and my pelvis are stacked over one another, which is a position that's going to be replicated as I'm bracing when I'm hinging later in the session. So doing this now makes a whole lot of sense. It's serving as a movement that I'm challenging my core with, but it also has a functional component now, which is going to carry over a couple movements into the session when I'm doing my stiff legs. All right, so calves. Most of you, myself included in the past, don't give our calves the attention we need, and it's become an epidemic, and so many of us have shitty calves. So there are a few exceptions to that rule, but there's very, very few people that I've met that can really get away with just not training their calves at all. If you think you're one of those people, chances are your calves just aren't as good as you think, so it's not gonna hurt to train them anyways. That said, with calf training, what we wanna do is slow tempo, control the changes of directions on both ends of the range of motion, so out of the top, out of the bottom. Make sure you're getting into a good stretch. Give it some real effort. Do that at a high frequency, and you might just grow some calves. At least I'm hoping that works for me. And yes, calves get logged as well. We still want progress there. So what you just saw me doing there is, a few months ago I strained my adductor. It still plays up from time to time. So as part of my feeder sets, my warm-up, before I get into working sets on any adductor piece, what we've put into my program is isometrics in varying ranges. So what I was doing there is I was starting very adducted, so my knees close together, and then just lift the stack ever so slightly so that the load is on me. Hold it there 10 seconds, move it out a little bit, move it out a little bit, move it out a little bit. What that's doing is exposing me to the entire spectrum of ranges that my adductors are going to see through each rep, and then forcing me to hold every couple degrees under full control so that I've been exposed to it come time for me to actually work, and hopefully every inch of every rep is going to be under control when I start doing my working sets. Okay, so where we're training today, Fitness 365, we're lucky enough that we have a pretty rare adductor piece here in this, and you'll notice the main difference with this opposed to the adductor piece that you would normally see people using is that this allows a setup with extended knees, so straight legs. For me, I mentioned I strained an adductor a couple months ago. That's mostly better now. However, what I notice when I'm doing adductor movements with my knees flexed to 90 degrees is I tend to bring in a lot of internal rotators, which essentially takes tension off of my adductors and kind of puts me in a risky position. So with this, I find it a lot easier to set up more externally rotated at my hips, which keeps pretty much 100% of the tension on my adductors, and I'm yet to experience any discomfort with this. So I'm lucky I have access to it. I'm gonna stick with it. It's definitely much harder, in my opinion, than a regular adductor piece, so I have a little bit more progressive runway there as well. So yeah. Setting up home base. I'll take that. Stiff legs. I didn't really say all that much through all my feeder sets because this working set is one of the ones that haunts me all week. So I really need to lock in and get myself where I need to be if I want to continue making progress week to week. I'm kind of at that point now where everything matters. So if I were to get out of focus for whatever reason, if I were to not give myself the appropriate time to check in on everything, make sure all the chain of systems involved are firing as they should be, I'm not gonna make progress. Luckily today, paid off. A rep up, so I'll take it. Today's a good day so far.
Go. Go.
I think that was 7. We'll take it. The single worst part about any form of deadlift, I have to now take these off. Wish I could pay someone to do this shit. Okay, so prone hamstring curls. Now, there's a lot of content floating around the internet, floating around Instagram on how to execute these. And that's a good thing. The more information we can spread on how to adequately execute movements, the better. However, a lot of them tend to be very sciencey, and that is necessary to a degree. However, you don't necessarily have to understand exactly how the pelvis has to articulate, exactly where your rib cage needs to be. You just need to think about this logically. So, let's try that. What are we trying to challenge here? We're trying to challenge our hamstrings through knee flexion, okay? So, bending our knee when we're laying on our front, laying on our stomach. If I told you that the best way to do that is to only have flexion at the knee happening without the hips raising, because it's very easy to compensate through extension through the lower back, which is going to take tension off your hamstring. So, number 1, we don't want the hips to raise off the pad. Number 2, we don't want to use momentum. Common way a lot of people tend to use momentum without realizing is they tend to rock their torso up and down on the handles as they move through each rep. If I told you that, what are you going to do? Naturally, you're probably going to focus on keeping your hips on the pad, and naturally you're probably going to use the handles to pull your torso down and lock that in place and just focus on knee flexion from there, right? So we're achieving the same thing. We're doing it a lot simpler. You just need to think about your movements, think about what you're trying to challenge and how best to set up. The last thing I'll say to this is, to the point of hyperextending through our lower back to compensate, another thing you don't want to do is you don't want to see your knees lifting off the pad at the top of each rep. You just want to work through active range. A dead giveaway on that is you'll notice some people move through the concentric and then they'll dip down a few degrees before they're able to catch it and control the eccentric. That swing at the top is outside of your active range. So what you want to do is you want to move the concentric only to the point where you can stop it at the very top without it having to dip first and then control it on the way down. Does that make sense? So lock your torso in place, drive your hips down to the pad, don't let your knees raise, move through knee flexion, control the tempo, control the change of directions on both ends of the movement. So as I was saying, if you watch my setback, you'll notice my eccentric is slow. It's out of control. I'm pausing briefly in the bottom. I'm controlling that concentric. I'm not just throwing it. I'm pausing at the top as well. Think of something like a hamstring curl. like a bicep curl. You want to make it as hard as you can. You want to put as much tension across fibers as you can. That is how you grow new tissue. So keep that in mind. All right, on to leg press now for our big quad movement of the day. You'll notice I'm banding it. What I'm doing that for is because I want to get as much out of this as possible. In other words, I want to be able to extend my set as long as I can. And considering we tend to be a little bit weaker in the very bottom and a little bit stronger in the very top, what the band is doing is it's going to pick up in the top half of the movement. It's going to add resistance where I tend to be stronger. So what it's giving us is sort of an accommodating resistance, right? So this is going to drop off into the bottom. Considering it's dropping off into the bottom, I'm going to make sure that I'm in full control into the bottom with a brief pause, because it's dropping off anyway. So I might as well be in control there, and then push up and then have the extra poundage added from the bands in the very top. We'll take it. All right, I want to show you guys something. If you look in the mirror, you will see the man behind the camera. Show him. Show him. That's Arnie. If you are in the GTA, if you need any video or film work, not just for the gym, any video work, hit him up. I always tag him, and anything I put out, you'll be happy that you hired him. played up on both working sets from last week, I'll take it. A constant debate in our industry now, and I'm sure until the end of time, is does load matter? Does the amount of weight on the bar, does the number on the side of the dumbbell make a difference when we're training for hypertrophy? In other words, training to build as much muscle as possible. So my take on it is this. If we look at the mechanisms of hypertrophy, we have mechanical tension, we have metabolic stress, we have muscle damage really being a side effect of mechanical tension and metabolic stress. Now, if we look at these three, mechanical tension is going to be the most effective way to elicit a hypertrophy response. That ties into load. So in short, to the original question, yes, load matters. However, there's a caveat to that. More load doesn't always mean more tension. So when I say load matters, I mean load matters in the context of your training, in the context of the way you move and the way you execute movements. In other words, if you are progressing load, but keeping your execution within preset boundaries that you defined previously, good execution and form to land within, if you're keeping that constant and making progress to load, then it is likely safe to say that you're increasing the amount of mechanical tension in a way that's going to be productive in eliciting a hypertrophy response. However, if you are just trying to keep up with he, she, or they, and you're adding more load and fucking up your form just to do it, there's a good chance that you're actually resulting in less tension on the muscle. So, yes, load matters, but it has to be in the context of your training. So keep that in mind and just progress week to week within the confines of the way you move, and chances are you're going to build new tissue. All right, walking lunges. One set, 30 steps. What I like to do with these is after two pretty much extended sets of pulse reps on the leg press, my quads are already starting to cramp. After hinging earlier, my brace isn't all the way intact. So instead of loading these too heavily and having myself fail at my brace, I tend to just go with body weight, get over here relatively quickly after my leg press, and just go with my body weight, take them slow, pause them, drive as much blood into my already almost cramping quads as I can as kind of a finisher to my quads for the day. So, setting up on the seated hamstring curl. With any machine we use, we want to think of in what manner is the load in question acting on us. So in this case, the load is being expressed through this pad, right? We want to think of the direction that this pad is pulling us in the eccentric. So if I hop in here, there's two general ways we see people set up. One is hugging this knee pad, because the theory is that this puts me in a position where I can stack my ribcage over my pelvis, which tends to be a strong position. However, thinking about how the load is acting on us. This load is trying to pull me forward and up. In other words, what that's trying to do is pull me forward out of the seat. So if I double down on that and pull myself forward, and I'm using a load that's actually worth something, I'm gonna end up with half my quad out the end of the seat because I'm doubling down and facilitating the direction that this load is pulling on me. What we rather always wanna do is create a counter force. So what I'm going to do is push myself away in the opposite direction that pad is trying to pull me, right? Because the goal is to keep myself, my torso, my body as stable as possible, so that the only thing moving is what we're trying to challenge. In this case, flexion at the knee to challenge our hamstring. So what I think is a better way to set up for these, as long as you have a basic understanding of how to keep your rib cage relatively tucked and not flaring like crazy, is I take my hands, I place them on the knee pad. I'm crunching down my upper abs slightly, keeping myself in good posture, pushing myself back. Now, that pad's not gonna pull me anywhere. I'm set in a stable position here from which to then work. And I don't have to worry about being pulled out of where I wanna be as the set progresses. All 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, Like it. Quick tip with seated calf raises. A common mistake I see with people is that these tend to have handles over the thigh pad. It is very easy to hold onto this handle during your set, rock back, and give yourself assistance during your set without even realizing it. So when you watch me do it, you'll notice I place my hands loosely on top. I'm not actually gripping on it, because if I am, I know I have a tendency to pull on this a little bit. I don't want to make it any easier for myself. I don't want to take away what the load is actually doing in terms of challenging myself. So keep that in mind. Don't be giving yourself assistance without knowing it. Keep those hands to yourself.